Why humans are never allowed to fight in galactic war again. The day humans arrived at the Galactic Coalition, most species did not notice them at all. They did not arrive with shining fleets or massive warships. Their vessels were small, smooth, and quiet, painted in soft colors instead of hard metal gray. They moved slowly through space, careful and patient, as if they were guests walking into someone else's home instead of warriors stepping into a battlefield. Commander Verstel noticed them because he always noticed things others ignored. Verstel belonged to the Cathari, a tall, four-armed species with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. He had spent most of his life preparing for war. The galaxy had taught him that peace was only a pause between conflicts, and every species needed to be ready when that pause ended. The Coalition Hall floated in the center of a massive space station, a place where light from 1,000 stars filtered through crystal walls. Delegates from dozens of worlds gathered there, speaking in voices, colors, and signals that mixed into a soft, constant hum. Verstel stood near one of the upper platforms, watching as the new years had passed since the Galactic Assembly had formally restricted humans from participating in wars. The ruling was clear. They were to serve only as mediators, guides, and helpers, not combatants. Yet despite this restriction, humans continued to influence the galaxy, not with weapons, not with fleets, but with something far more enduring: trust and compassion. Verstel had grown accustomed to seeing humans in the quiet corners of space, where the galaxy's tensions were most fragile. He had come to expect them on neutral stations, guiding negotiations between old enemies, helping cities rebuild after disasters, and mentoring children from different species in the shared language of curiosity. He had also learned that humans had a remarkable way of making everyone around them believe that cooperation was not only possible, but inevitable. One day, Verstel found himself on a human-run station orbiting a star that was slowly dying. The station itself was modest: domes of soft light, gardens with plants from dozens of worlds, and quiet corridors filled with laughter and conversation. There were no flags, no ranks displayed, no armies waiting in the shadows, only people. People from many species, living and working together without fear. Verstel walked through the main hall and saw a human teacher kneeling beside an alien child. The child had 6 arms and glowing skin, trembling as it tried to hold a delicate paintbrush. The teacher, a woman with calm eyes and a gentle voice, guided the child's hands, showing how to make soft lines and bright dots. Nearby, a group of humans and aliens shared stories about their worlds, trading music, recipes, and games. Verstel could not help but smile. For decades, he had prepared for the galaxy's inevitable conflicts, believing that strength came from power and victory. Humans had proven that strength came from presence, empathy, and the courage to act even when there was no guarantee of success. A soft chime echoed through the station, signaling a communication request. Verstel followed the signal to a small observation room where Ambassador Lena Harper was speaking with a fleet of humans scattered across the galaxy. Their voices filled the room through screens, carrying reports of refugees guided safely, conflicts averted, and communities rebuilt. Each story was a quiet victory, invisible to the war councils and yet more effective than any battle plan. Lena looked up when Verstel entered. "We've received another message from a neutral system. They've asked for our help mediating a dispute over water rights," she said. "They could have gone to their own fleets, but they trust us instead." Verstel nodded. "It seems they trust you more than their own governments." "That's the point," Lena said softly. "Trust moves faster than fear. Once that happens, even the strongest fleet can't command hearts." Verstel walked to the observation window, gazing at the distant stars. He thought about how different the galaxy had become. Borders were still there, but they were not walls. They were guides. Fleets were still present, but they were now often escorts, protecting convoys and aiding civilians rather than preparing for attack. Enemy species no longer viewed humans with suspicion, for they had seen them act without malice, without agendas, without the need to dominate. In the days that followed, Verstel observed a profound shift. An enemy fleet that had once been poised to blockade a contested system instead docked at a neutral station. Its officers, young and hesitant, were guided by humans to negotiate a fair distribution of supplies to local populations. Verstel watched via remote feed as humans mediated, asked questions, and listened intently. The fleet's officers left the station not with orders, but with agreements signed in mutual understanding. It was in that moment that Verstel truly understood what humans had accomplished. They had not won battles. They had not conquered territories. They had won trust, built bridges, and changed the way the galaxy thought about conflict. Their influence was invisible to those expecting victories measured in destruction and conquest, but it was more powerful than any weapon he had ever commanded. One evening, Verstel joined Lena for a quiet walk in the station's garden. The soft light reflected off plants from hundreds of worlds, and the gentle hum of life filled the air. Children from different species played together, laughing, sharing stories, and building small models of spaceships from soft materials. Humans and aliens alike moved among them, guiding, encouraging, and listening. Verstel paused near a water fountain and watched a small alien child offering a flower to a human child, who accepted it with a shy smile. Lena stood beside him quietly, her gaze on the children. "Do you ever worry that they'll grow up knowing only peace?" Verstel asked. Lena smiled softly. "Peace is not a weakness, it's a choice. We show them that it is possible, and once they know it, they will carry it with them." Verstel nodded. He realized that humans had not just changed the present, they had shaped the galaxy's future. They had turned fear into understanding, suspicion into dialogue, and conflict into opportunity for connection. A chime interrupted their quiet reflection. Another system had requested human assistance, this time to coordinate aid for a planet recently hit by an unexpected solar storm. Lena's eyes lit up with that familiar spark of determination. "Come on," she said. "They need us." Verstel followed her through the corridors to the operations room. Screens flickered with star maps, civilian locations, and supply shipments. Human teams coordinated effortlessly across light years, communicating not in orders but in questions and guidance. Verstel observed a young human pilot guiding a convoy of alien refugees safely through an asteroid field. He watched a human diplomat mediate a dispute between rival merchants over precious minerals. He saw engineers repairing damaged energy grids on neutral planets. Each act was small, yet together they formed a web of care spanning the galaxy. For the first time, Verstel realized that the humans were not merely helping, they were teaching the galaxy a new way to exist. The galaxy had learned to rely not on fear, weapons, or intimidation, but on cooperation, understanding, and shared responsibility. In the following cycles, the ripple of their influence expanded. Formerly hostile species now collaborated openly. Trade routes previously abandoned were bustling with activity, not of military convoys, but of merchants, educators, and families. Civilian populations thrived in ways previously impossible in times of fear. Verstel stood on the observation deck one night, watching a human convoy drift past a distant system that had once been considered a front line. Children waved from the windows of safe stations. Adults smiled and nodded at the ships as they passed. There were no fleets in battle formation, no commands barking across networks, just a quiet acknowledgement, a connection made across light years. He thought back to the first day humans had arrived, small and seemingly fragile, yet fearless in their determination to act. He remembered watching a human lift a tiny alien child from a crowded station and hold them gently while calming their fears. At the time, he had wondered what power a species like that could possibly have. Now he understood. Humans did not need armies. They did not need fleets. They did not need weapons. They had something more enduring: presence, trust, empathy, and the courage to act for what was right, even when no one demanded it. In that moment, Verstel understood why the Council had feared them. They were too powerful, not in strength, but in influence. Humans had changed the very nature of the galaxy. They had made war optional, peace possible, and collaboration inevitable. A quiet alert sounded in the operations room. Another call for human assistance, this time from a distant system where a minor misunderstanding between two species threatened to escalate into conflict. Lena turned to Verstel, her eyes calm and certain. "Shall we go?" she asked. He nodded, feeling a profound sense of clarity. "Yes, let's show them how it's done." As they boarded a human ship, Verstel looked out at the stars stretching endlessly before them. Ships of various species followed, not as armies, but as witnesses to what humans had begun. He realized that humans had become more than mediators. They were bridges, guides, and the quiet pulse of the galaxy itself. The convoy moved into the darkness between stars, carrying not weapons, but hope. Libraries, medicine, translators, and stories filled the hold. Humans and allies worked together in a silent promise to preserve life, understanding, and cooperation across every system. Verstel, standing beside Lena, whispered the words he had heard countless times in human broadcasts. "We see you. We are here. You don't have to be afraid." And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it. The galaxy no longer feared war. It feared nothing, because humanity had shown it a different way to exist. Every ship that drifted between systems carried a story, a voice, a connection. Each small act of help rippled across countless worlds. The humans were no longer just a species. They were a movement. They were a bridge spanning light years, a living proof that courage could take many forms and that strength could exist in kindness. Verstel realized that the humans had not only reshaped the galaxy, they had rewritten the rules of existence itself. They had turned fear into dialogue, isolation into connection, and the endless cycle of conflict into a quiet, steady hum of life that stretched from star to star. And somewhere far ahead, a small human ship drifted toward another system in need, carrying its quiet power, the promise that no one had to be alone and that the galaxy could always choose hope over fear. Verstel watched the lights fade into the distance, and he smiled. For the first time in millennia, he understood why humans would never be allowed to fight in a galactic war again. Not because they were weak, not because they were dangerous, because once humans arrived, war itself could no longer survive. The galaxy had learned the hardest lesson of all. True power did not come from destruction. It came from presence, compassion, and the courage to connect species entered. The humans did not wear armor. They did not carry visible weapons. Their clothes were simple, light, and practical. They walked in small groups, looking around with wide eyes, whispering to each other and pointing at the strange shapes and colors of the station. "They look lost," one of Verstel's officers said. Verstel did not answer. He watched a human stop in the middle of the hall to help a small, floating alien who had dropped a data tablet. The human bent down, picked it up, and handed it back with a small bow of the head. The floating alien glowed a brighter shade of blue in response, a sign of gratitude. Lost, Verstel thought, or curious. The coalition leaders had already decided that humans would not take part in the coming war directly. Their species was new, their technology average, and their numbers small compared to the ancient empires of the galaxy. They were assigned to support roles instead: translation teams, engineering units, civilian coordination. Verstel believed this was a kind decision. War was not a place for a species that still looked at the stars with wonder instead of strategy. Later that cycle, Verstel reviewed the deployment lists. Human ships were being sent to strange places, not near the front lines. Not near the borders where enemy fleets were gathering. They were being sent to trade routes, neutral systems, and civilian stations. Verstel frowned. That did not make sense. He opened a communication channel to the human coordinator, a woman named Ambassador Lena Harper. Her face appeared on the screen, framed by short, dark hair and calm eyes. "Commander Verstel," she said with a small smile. "How can I help you?" "I was reviewing the deployment paths of your ships," Verstel said. "You are not following standard coalition strategy." Lena nodded. "That's true." "Why?" She paused for a moment as if choosing her words carefully. "Because we are not preparing for where the war will start," she said. "We are preparing for what the war will break." Verstel did not understand. "War breaks many things," he said. "That is why we fight carefully." Lena smiled again, but this time there was something sad in it. "We fight so that things don't have to break at all." The screen went dark before Verstel could respond. Over the next few days, reports began to arrive. Human engineering teams rebuilt old supply stations that had not been used in decades. Human translators opened communication lines between species that had not spoken directly in generations. Human ships delivered medical supplies and emergency food packs to systems that were not even officially part of the coalition. Verstel called up one of his intelligence officers. "Are the humans preparing some kind of political move?" he asked. The officer shook his head. "We cannot find any sign of military buildup or territorial claims." "Then what are they doing?" The officer hesitated. "Helping, Commander." That answer did not sit well with Verstel. War was about power, about lines drawn in space and resources claimed or defended. Helping did not win wars. Strategy did. And yet, strange things began to happen along the borders. Refugee ships from the enemy side started appearing in neutral space. Instead of being turned away, they were guided by human vessels to safe stations. Families were given food, shelter, and communication access to contact loved ones across the stars. Verstel watched recorded footage of humans sitting with frightened aliens in long halls, listening to their stories, offering simple comforts. No threats, no demands. Just presence. Why are they doing this? Verstel asked Lena during their next call. Because someone has to, she said. But these are enemy civilians, he replied. Their governments are preparing to fight us. Lena leaned closer to the screen. Civilians are not governments. Families are not fleets. Fear spreads faster than ships, Commander. If we don't stop it, no victory will matter. Verstel did not respond. He did not know how to argue with that. The real shock came when a classified report crossed his desk. It showed human models predicting system failures across coalition space. Trade collapses, power shortages, communication blackouts, not caused by attacks but by panic, misinformation, and broken trust. Verstel stared at the data. "You're telling me they saw this coming?" he asked his officer. "Yes," the officer said. "Their predictions were made before the enemy fleets even moved." Verstel requested a private meeting with Lena. They met in a quiet observation chamber where stars drifted slowly past the wide windows. The light reflected softly off the smooth floor. "You knew this would happen," Verstel said. Lena nodded. "We've seen it before, on our own world, between our own nations." "Then why didn't you warn the council?" he asked. "We did," she replied. "They were preparing for ships and weapons. We were preparing for people." Verstel looked out at the stars. "You act as if war is already lost." "No," Lena said gently. "We act as if peace is still possible." Verstel felt something uncomfortable in his chest. Not anger, not fear, doubt. That same cycle, a strange message spread across coalition networks. It was a simple broadcast in dozens of languages. Human voices, alien voices, even artificial intelligences took turns speaking. They did not talk about victory. They talked about home, about food, about songs and skies and the feeling of safety. The message ended with the same words every time. "We are still here." "You don't have to be afraid." Verstel expected the council to shut it down. They did not. Instead, something even stranger happened. The enemy's outer fleet slowed. Scouts reported ships holding position instead of advancing. Some even turned away, escorting civilian vessels deeper into safe space. Verstel stood on the command deck of his flagship, staring at the star map. "This doesn't make sense," one of his officers said. Verstel finally understood something, though he did not yet have words for it. The humans were not fighting the enemy. They were fighting the reason the enemy existed. Later, alone in his quarters, Verstel reviewed the first records of human history that the coalition had archived. Wars, divisions, borders drawn and redrawn over centuries. And yet here they were, a species that had survived its own endless conflicts. A species that now walked into a galactic war without weapons, without armor, without fear. Verstel looked at a still image of a human child, standing beside an alien child on a station corridor, both holding glowing star maps and laughing at how different and yet similar they were. For the first time in his life, Verstel wondered if strength was not about how hard a species could strike, but about how much it refused to let the galaxy fall apart. Far beyond the coalition hall, human ships drifted quietly near fragile systems, their lights warm and steady in the dark. And though no battle had yet begun, something much bigger was already changing. The war everyone had prepared for was not the war that was coming. The first sign that the galaxy was changing did not come from a fleet movement or a political speech. It came from a broken supply ship drifting near the edge of neutral space. The ship belonged to the Dravik, a species known for their sharp voices and sharper trade deals. Their cargo vessel had lost power after a long jump, leaving it dark and silent between star systems. Normally, such a ship would be marked and avoided until official rescue teams arrived. But a small human ship arrived first. Verstel watched the recorded footage later. The human vessel did not scan for weapons. It did not send warnings. It simply moved closer and opened a communication channel. A human voice spoke slowly, carefully in the Dravik language. "We see you. We are here to help." The Dravik crew, tired and afraid, allowed the human team aboard. Power was restored. Food and water were shared. The humans even helped repair damaged navigation systems, then stayed long enough to guide the ship safely to a trade station. Verstel paused the recording. This should not have mattered. One ship saved was nothing in a galaxy preparing for war. But then another report came in, and another. Human ships were everywhere. They were guiding refugee convoys through dangerous regions of space. They were opening emergency communication lines between worlds that had cut ties long ago. They were building small stations near unstable systems, places where anyone could dock, rest, and speak without fear. The enemy noticed too. At first, their commanders suspected a trick. They believed the humans were gathering information, mapping weaknesses, preparing something hidden. So they sent a patrol fleet to intercept a human convoy. Verstel followed the situation closely, expecting tension, maybe even the start of the war everyone feared. Instead, the human ship slowed down. They did not turn away. They did not change course. They broadcast a simple message. These ships carry food, medicine, and families. You are welcome to inspect them. The enemy fleet hesitated. Long moments passed in silence. Finally, one enemy ship moved forward. It docked with a human vessel. Scans showed nothing but supplies, medical bays, and tired civilians from both sides of the conflict. The patrol fleet did not fire. They turned around and left. When Verstel heard the report, he felt something cold and strange in his chest. This was not strategy. This was something else. He requested another meeting with Lena. This time they met in a large garden dome inside the station. Artificial sunlight warmed the air, and plants from dozens of worlds grew together in quiet harmony. "You are changing the flow of the war," Verstel said. Lena knelt beside a small tree with silver leaves gently touching its branches. "We are changing the flow of fear. You are interfering with military operations." She stood and faced him. "We are interfering with suffering." Verstel crossed his arms. "You realize this will make powerful people angry." Lena smiled softly. "Powerful people are already angry. We're trying to help everyone else." Verstel had no answer for that. Across the galaxy, something strange began to spread. Human broadcasts reached enemy systems. They did not carry demands or threats. They carried stories, music, images of distant worlds and strange skies. Messages from civilians who had crossed borders and found kindness instead of cages. An enemy pilot, young and nervous, watched one of these broadcasts in the quiet of his ship. It showed a human medic helping an injured alien child, carefully wrapping glowing bandages around small, trembling limbs. The pilot turned off his targeting system. On a coalition trade station, a group of merchants who had once argued over routes and profits now sat together, listening to a human storyteller describe Earth's oceans and storms. They laughed, shared food, and made new agreements without shouting. Verstel began to notice a pattern. Everywhere humans went, lines softened, borders became doors. The council, however, grew uneasy. In a closed session, Verstel listened as leaders spoke in sharp, nervous tones. "They are too influential," one delegate said. "They move populations, shift opinions, and reshape alliances without permission." "They are breaking the balance of power," another added. Verstel stood. "They are preventing collapse." "That is not their role," a third voice snapped. Verstel wanted to argue, but he did not yet have the right words. Outside the council chambers, Lena waited. "They are afraid of you," Verstel said quietly. Lena looked tired. "They've always been afraid of us, on our own world too." "Why do you keep going?" he asked. "Because we remember what it's like to be on the other side of fear," she replied, "and we don't want anyone else to stay there." The next major change came from the enemy's core systems. A massive civilian evacuation began. Entire cities were being moved away from expected battle zones. Human ships helped organize the routes. Coalition ships followed their maps. For the first time in galactic history, enemy and ally ships flew side by side, guiding civilians to safety. Verstel watched the star map glow with moving lines of light, crossing borders that had once been guarded by fleets. No one fired. No one chased. The war, it seemed, was being drained of its fuel. Later, Verstel received a message from an enemy commander. It was short and direct. "Your humans are making this impossible." Verstel stared at the words, "impossible to fight." He forwarded the message to Lena. She read it and smiled sadly. "That's the idea." Verstel walked alone through the station corridors that cycle. He passed humans sitting with aliens, sharing meals, teaching simple games, laughing at translation mistakes. He saw a human engineer working with an enemy technician, both focused on fixing a damaged power grid for a neutral world. There were no uniforms, no ranks, just people. For the first time, Verstel felt something shift inside him. All his life, he had believed that peace came after victory. Humans seemed to believe peace came before it. Far away in the deep reaches of space, enemy fleets remained still. Coalition fleets held their positions. Between them, human ships moved like quiet stars, carrying voices instead of weapons, bridges instead of walls. The galaxy waited, not for a battle, but for a decision. And for the first time in centuries, that decision did not seem to belong to generals or councils alone. It belonged to everyone who listened to a simple message drifting through the dark. We see you. We are here. You don't have to be afraid. The first time an enemy ship asked for help instead of permission to pass, the galaxy did not know how to react. The message reached a human relay station near a quiet blue star. The signal was weak, full of static, but the words were clear. Our engines are failing. We have families on board. We do not want to drift. The human team did not ask which side the ship belonged to. They sent coordinates, medical support, and a slow-moving escort ship with bright, welcoming lights. Verstel watched the situation unfold from his command deck. His officers waited for his order. Should they alert the fleet? Should they prepare defenses? Verstel raised one hand. Let the humans handle it, he said. The rescue took hours. The enemy ship, large and heavy, struggled to stay stable as human engineers moved carefully through its damaged systems. They worked side by side with enemy technicians, sharing tools and instructions through simple translation programs. When the ship finally stabilized, a message came back. Thank you. We will remember this. Verstel sat quietly for a long time after reading it. Across the galaxy, stories like this began to spread. On a distant station, a human teacher set up a small learning hall for children from many species. They used simple pictures, shared games, and stories about stars and planets. Children who had grown up hearing only fear about the other side now sat next to each other, laughing at the same silly drawings and strange human songs. An enemy pilot, the same young one who had once turned off his targeting system, found himself docking at a neutral station. He expected cold stares and guarded looks. Instead, a human greeted him with a cup of warm drink and a simple question. How far have you traveled? The pilot told his story, about long patrols, about missing his home sky, about the pressure to be ready for something he did not fully understand. The human listened. No judgment, no advice, just listening. That moment stayed with the pilot longer than any order he had ever received. Verstel began to receive reports not just from officers, but from civilians. Merchants spoke of trade routes reopening between systems that had been closed for years. Farmers on distant worlds reported receiving human-built tools that helped them grow food in harsh climates. Medical stations saw human volunteers working long cycles, helping anyone who arrived, no matter their origin. The war machines were still there, the fleets still waited, but the space between them was filling with something else. Connection. The Galactic Council called another closed session. This time the tone was different. They are reshaping our society, one leader said. Our people trust them more than they trust us. They move freely through every system, another added. They speak to everyone. Verstel stood again. They help everyone, he said. That is the problem, a voice replied sharply. They do not choose sides. Verstel looked around the room. Perhaps that is the solution. Silence followed. After the meeting, Verstel found Lena standing near a wide window that showed a line of human ships drifting past a distant planet. They are talking about restricting you, he said. Lena nodded. We expected that. Why? He asked. Because when people stop being afraid of each other, they start asking why they were told to be afraid in the first place. Verstel watched the ships. They moved slowly, carefully, like they were afraid to disturb the space around them. What will you do if they ban you? He asked. Lena smiled. We'll keep helping, just quieter. The next shift came from a place no one expected. An enemy world sent a public message, not to the council, not to the fleets, to the galaxy. The broadcast showed a wide city under a strange purple sky. People stood in long lines, holding simple signs written in many languages. We do not want our children to grow up in fear, the message said. We have seen what humans bring. We choose that. Verstel felt his breath catch. Within hours, similar messages appeared from coalition worlds, from neutral systems. from places that had never spoken in public before. The galaxy was no longer waiting for orders. It was making a choice. Enemy fleets began to withdraw from border zones, not in retreat but in redirection. They moved to escort civilian convoys. Coalition fleets followed, not as rivals but as partners. Human ships remained in the middle, small and steady, like quiet hearts beating between two sides. Verstel walked through a human-operated station that cycle. It was busy but calm. Different species moved together, sharing space without the usual tension. He saw a human mechanic teaching a tall, insect-like alien how to fix a power unit. They laughed when a spark jumped out and startled them both. He saw children drawing star maps on a wide floor panel, arguing happily about where to place imaginary planets. Verstel stopped near a wall where someone had written a simple sentence in many languages. "We are still here." He felt something warm behind his eyes, a feeling he did not remember from any battlefield or command center. Later, he received another message from the enemy commander. "It is over," the message said, "not because we lost, but because we cannot continue." Verstel forwarded it to Lena. She closed her eyes for a moment when she read it. "That's all we ever wanted," she said softly. The council, however, did not celebrate. They met in emergency session. "This cannot continue," one leader said. "They are too powerful without being accountable." "They have changed loyalty across the galaxy," another added. Verstel spoke, his voice steady. "They have changed trust." The council did not like that word. A proposal was introduced. Humans would no longer be allowed to take part in any future galactic conflicts. They would be restricted to neutral roles only. Verstel felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Lena listened to the news in silence. "They think this will limit you," Verstel said. She shook her head. "They don't understand. This is what we wanted." "Why?" he asked. "Because we never wanted to fight," she said. "We wanted to arrive before the fighting did." The galaxy began to settle into something new. Borders softened. Trade routes reopened fully. Cultural exchanges became common instead of rare. Verstel watched as young officers in his fleet trained not just in strategy, but in communication, mediation, and understanding. Humans were invited to teach, not as commanders, but as guides. One quiet cycle, Verstel stood again in the observation chamber where he had first spoken to Lena. The stars looked the same, but the space between them felt different. He realized then that the humans had not won a war. They had changed the rules of what a war could be. Far away, on a small human ship drifting near a new conflict zone, a simple broadcast began to play. Stories, music, voices from many worlds, and the same words at the end. "We see you, we are here, you don't have to be afraid." Verstel closed his eyes and listened. The galaxy was no longer holding its breath. It was learning how to breathe together. The day the Galactic Assembly gathered, the station felt heavier than it ever had before. Thousands of ships floated outside the wide glass walls, their lights blinking like silent stars. Delegates from every known species filled the great hall. Some stood tall and still. Others floated, glowed, or shifted colors as they spoke in quiet groups. At the center of it all stood a simple human platform. No banners, no symbols of power, just a smooth circle of light where humans were asked to stand and speak. Verstel watched from his place among the coalition leaders. He had attended many assemblies in his life, but none like this. This was not a meeting to decide borders or trade rules. This was a meeting to decide what the galaxy would become. Lena Harper stood at the center of the platform. She did not wear formal robes or medals. Her hands rested calmly at her sides. The main speaker of the assembly, a tall being made of light and sound, raised its voice. "Humans of Earth," it said, "you have changed the flow of our conflict. You have altered alliances, redirected fleets, and influenced populations across every major system." Lena nodded. "Yes, without authority, without permission. We never asked for power," Lena said. "We asked for space to help." A wave of quiet movement passed through the hall. A delegate from a warrior species spoke next. Its voice echoed like stone breaking. "You have weakened our command structures. Our soldiers listen to your broadcasts instead of our orders." Lena did not deny it. "We speak to the part of them that exists before they became soldiers." Another voice joined in, softer but sharp. "You have made war impossible." Lena looked around the hall, at the glowing forms, the towering figures, the floating shapes. "Good," she said. The word fell into the silence like a small stone into deep water. Verstel felt his chest tighten. The assembly leader raised its arms and the light in the room shifted. "There is a proposal before us," it said. "From this cycle forward, humans will be restricted from participating in galactic wars. They will be designated as neutral mediators only. They will not command fleets. They will not lead military operations. They will not influence strategic decisions during conflicts." A low murmur spread through the hall. Verstel closed his eyes for a moment. This was the ban he had feared, and yet part of him felt relief. Lena listened without changing her expression. "And how do you respond?" the leader asked. Lena took a slow breath. "We accept," she said. The hall erupted into noise, voices, colors, movements. Verstel opened his eyes in shock. "You accept," he whispered, though Lena could not hear him. The assembly leader raised its arms again. "Why?" it asked. Lena's voice was steady. "Because we never wanted to be part of your wars," she said. "We wanted to be part of your people." The noise slowly faded. Verstel stood. "Permission to speak," he said. The leader nodded. Verstel stepped forward, his forearms held low in a sign of respect. "I have served this galaxy my entire life," he said. "I was trained to see strength as control, to see peace as something that comes after victory." He turned toward Lena. "Humans showed us something else. That peace can come before victory. That trust can move faster than fleets." He faced the assembly again. "If you ban them from war, do not pretend it is a punishment. It is a recognition of what they are." The hall grew quiet. The leader spoke. "The decision stands." A soft light flashed across the room, and the ruling was recorded. The galaxy had made its choice. After the assembly ended, the station did not celebrate. It breathed. Ships outside did not move quickly. They drifted, slow and thoughtful. Verstel found Lena in a quiet corridor near a wide window that looked out into open space. "You could have argued," he said. Lena smiled faintly. "We've been arguing for a long time, Commander. Today we listened." "Are you not angry?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." "I'm relieved." "Relieved?" Verstel asked. "Yes," she said. "Now we don't have to prove what we're not. We can just be what we are." Verstel looked out at the stars. "And what is that?" "Bridges," Lena replied. Over the next cycles, the change spread across the galaxy. Human ships were reassigned, not to borders, not to fleets, to places between. They became part of new stations built in neutral space, places where delegates from enemy systems could meet without guards or threats. Human crews trained mediators from other species. They taught listening, translation, and ways to calm fear before it turned into anger. Verstel visited one of these stations. The air inside was warm and filled with soft light. No military symbols, no ranks displayed. He saw a human sitting at a wide table with 3 different species, each speaking in their own way. A small device in the center translated their words into simple sounds and colors. They were not arguing. They were planning a shared water system for a chain of distant worlds. Verstel felt something inside him loosen. On another station, he saw children from former enemy systems learning together. They shared stories of their home skies, drawing pictures of stars and creatures that lived on their worlds. A human teacher guided them, not leading, just helping them understand each other's words. The galaxy, slowly, quietly, began to change its habits. Verstel returned to his fleet, but his role felt different now. His officers asked him not just about patrol routes, but about how to handle disputes between crews, how to respond when a border world asked for help instead of protection. He found himself repeating human words. "Listen first." One cycle, he received a message from the same enemy commander who had once said the war was impossible. "I am stepping down," the message said. "My people want leaders who can speak, not just command." Verstel stared at the words for a long time. He forwarded them to Lena. She replied with a simple message. "That takes courage." Far away in the quiet spaces between systems, human ships continued their work. They carried libraries instead of weapons, medical teams instead of soldiers, translators instead of tacticians. But they also carried something harder to measure: hope. The galaxy did not become perfect. There were still arguments, still tensions, still moments when fear tried to rise again. But now, before fleets moved, before borders hardened, a human ship would arrive, not with demands. With questions: "What happened? What do you need? How can we help?" Verstel stood one night on the observation deck of his flagship, watching a human vessel drift toward a distant world where trouble had begun to grow. The ship's lights were soft and steady. He realized then that the assembly had been wrong about one thing. They thought banning humans from war would limit them. But humans had never been fighting wars at all. They had been fighting the space between people. And now that space was filling with voices, stories, and quiet understanding. The galaxy was no longer preparing for its next conflict. It was preparing for its next conversation. Verstel placed one hand against the glass and whispered words he had learned from humans. "We see you." The stars, silent and endless, seemed to shine just a little warmer in response.